All right, Chapter 7, the lymphatic and immune systems. So we're going to start off by going over the lymphatic system. So here we go. The lymphatic system consists of the lymph vessels and a few organs, but its primary functions are going to be absorbing the excess interstitial fluid and returning it to the bloodstream, and then using the lymphatic capillaries called lacteals in the small intestine to absorb dietary fats and transport those into the bloodstream. It's also going to be involved in the production, maintenance, and distribution of lymphocytes within the body, and it ultimately helps to defend against pathogens, which is why it's been pushed in with the immune system here. So the lymphatic vessels are really interesting. They carry a fluid called lymph. Now these lymphatic vessels begin as blind-ended lymphatic capillaries in the tissues. So kind of like how so if you remember from the circulatory system, we have the arteries that branch into arterioles, which branch into capillaries. Those capillaries come together to form venules, to form veins, to go back to the heart. So that's how our circulatory system is just that. It's circulatory, where we're branching larger and smaller, going into and out of the heart. The lymphatic vessels are a little bit different. Like I said, they're blind-ended, meaning that they really only flow in one direction, which is from the body into the heart, or into the lymphatic vessels and into the lymphatic system. So as lymph moves away from tissues, the capillaries are going to merge into lymphatic vessels and then into lymphatic ducts. There are two lymphatic ducts that we're going to talk about, the thoracic duct and the right lymphatic duct. The larger thoracic duct collects lymph from the body below the thorax and the left arm and the left side of the head and neck and empties into the subclavian vein. The right lymphatic duct returns lymph from the right arm and right side of the head and neck into the right subclavian vein. The anatomy of the larger lymphatic vessels is similar to that of those cardiovascular veins, including the presence of valves to make sure that the lymph continues to flow in one direction. So those valves just prevent the lymph from flowing backwards due to the forces of gravity. The movement of lymph is actually largely dependent on skeletal muscle contraction. So the movement of your skeletal muscles, the movement of your body helps influence or control the flow of lymph through those lymphatic vessels. So those are the lymphatic vessels. Some of the other lymphoid tissues and organs that we are also going to discuss in this chapter would be the lymph nodes. The lymph nodes function as little filters. They filter and clean the lymph before returning it to the interstitial fluids. The thymus is also going to play an important role in the lymphoid system. Tonsils help protect against pathogens when they are inhaled or swallowed, and the spleen also filters and cleans blood. This diagram is an excellent sort of overview of the different organs and vessels of the lymphatic system. So we have the tonsil right up here. This is just a patch of lymphatic tissue that helps prevent the entrance of pathogens by way of nose and mouth. Then we travel down into the red bone marrow. This is just the site and origin of all types of blood cells. And of course, the circulatory system and the lymphatic system are very closely related. The thymus is a very interesting organ, which we are going to discuss a little bit later on in our endocrine system, but to mention it here, it is also part of the lymphatic system. It's made up of primarily lymphatic tissue, where T lymphocytes mature and learn to tell the difference between self and non-self, meaning that they're able to identify foreign antigens and fight off infection in the body. Moving downwards from there, we have the spleen, which cleanses the blood of cellular debris and bacteria, while it also responds to the presence of antigens. Over here, we have several lymph nodes. We have our inguinal lymph nodes that are going to cleanse the lymph and alert the immune system to pathogens. The thoracic duct will empty the lymph into the left subclavian vein. The right lymphatic duct empties lymph into the right subclavian vein up here. There are two types of lymphatic organs. We have the primary and secondary. Our primary lymphatic organs would be red bone marrow and thymus. The secondary lymphatic organs would include our lymph nodes, spleen, and tonsils. And we're going to walk through just each one of those just for a moment. So our red bone marrow, that's going to be that's going to be over here in the diagram. This is going to be the site of our blood cell production. In children, most of the bones are going to have red marrow, but by the time we reach adulthood, only a few bones are going to actually contain that red marrow for producing blood cells. We are also going to see B cells or B lymphocytes are going to mature here in the bone marrow. The thymus is next. The thymus is going to be this bilobed organ. It's found in the thoracic cavity superior to the heart, just above the heart. It's largest in children. It's actually very, very huge in children. It's very large in childhood, but it shrinks as we age. As our immune systems mature and can stand on their own, we have less need for the thymus. But it's going to have two primary functions. The first is to produce thymosin. Thymosin is a hormone that induces the maturation of T cells, or those T lymphocytes. Remember, we talked about those earlier when we talked about our white blood cells. So immature T cells are going to move from the marrow into the thymus, where they will mature to carry out their immune functions. The secondary lymphatic organs, like the lymph nodes, spleen, and tonsils, we can find those over here. Our spleen is going to be responsible for filtering blood. It's found in the upper left region of the abdominal cavity, right over here, upper left region of the abdominal cavity. There we go. Of the abdominal cavity. Connective tissue is going to help divide it into white pulp and red pulp, and the macrophages in the red pulp remove pathogen, debris, worn out red blood cells from the blood. And it's going to have a very thin outer capsule that can rupture due to trauma. So it's very important to protect that spleen. It is why it's located up inside of our rib cage. And if the spleen becomes damaged, it can have a huge impact on the rest of the body. Lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are going to be found in various places along the lymphatic vessels. Their role is going to be primarily to filter lymph. They're formed of connective tissues that form a capsule around it and divide it into these little compartments that you see here. That lymph node is going to be filled with macrophages that can engulf pathogens and debris. It's also going to house lymphocytes, which fight infections, and cancer cells. Remember those T and B lymphocytes. They're ultimately going to be named for their location. We're going to see them most commonly found in the neck, armpit, and groin. There are also lymphatic nodules. These are just concentrations of lymphoid tissue that don't really have a capsule around the outside of them, so they're not full-on lymph nodes, but just simply lymphatic nodules. Tonsils, like we did mention earlier, although they are not in this diagram, are located back in the pharynx. They have the same function as lymph nodes. They fight infections that come in through the nose and mouth. All right, so you should be able to describe how the lymphatic system assists in fluid homeostasis for the body, list the primary and secondary lymphatic organs, and predict what could happen to the body if the lymphatic ducts did not allow lymph to drain.